Now, revelations that taxpayers will have to pay millions of shillings in accommodation, air tickets and daily allowances for more than 20 members of parliament who have travelled to Russia to watch the World Cup have been met with outrage. The 7-day trip comes in the middle of harsh economic times and the government's pledge to cut wastage of public funds. But as Jackie Maribe now reports, National Assembly Speaker Justin Mutwiri has defended the trip.
When these pictures surfaced on social media, they stirred public outrage, particularly over the fact that the over 20 legislators had travelled to Moscow, Russia, to watch the World Cup on the taxpayers' bill. The MPs left the country on Sunday. And that there was no member of the national football team present in the government-sponsored trip irked a section of the public even more. Chogo Erastus said it is only in Kenya where the taxpayers' money is used to facilitate 20 MPs in World Cup Fiesta, Russia. Unfortunately, they cannot even attend a local football function to embrace local talent, but are busy flaunting their pictures in Russia. And Muthoka Tito saying, so taxpayers are footing the bill for MPs to travel to Russia to watch the World Cup, but Harambee Stars players cannot be sponsored by Sports Ministry to attend the international event. National Assembly Speaker Justin Mutwiri has, however, come to the defense of the MPs.
Some other members were sponsored by, or they went on their own, through their own private. The formal structures, Bunge Sports Club members who are there, and the committee, they have to bring a report to the House.
Those in Moscow include the Parliamentary Football Club Bunge FC, members of the Sports and Culture Committee, leaders of majority and minority in the Senate, Kipchumba Murkomen and James Orengo, Stuart Madzayo and Beatrice Kwamboka of the Senate Labour and Cultural Committee, and nominated Senator Millie Omanga. But an unapologetic Omanga's response:
I'm in Russia through personal sponsorship. I love football. I've been going for World Cup since 2002 when I was 20 years old, when it was in Japan. The debates, I'm actually surprised. I save for it. In the next 4 years, we'll be having another one in Qatar. And I'll start saving for it.
Citizen TV has further learned that for international trips, the members are normally booked in business class. Taxpayers will pay for their return tickets, accommodation and per diem for 7 days before the MPs jet back after watching the finals on Sunday.
That is the state of the nation. And let me get reactions now from my guests here in studio. And of course, I want your feedback. 22422 is our SMS line. And use the hashtag CitizenExtra. And I will read your SMSs as soon as they come in. But let me now introduce my guests in studio. Joining me are senior sports editors, Mutwiri Mutuota. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Ahiga.
Elias Makori, karibu sana. And thank you.
Thank you.
As you watch that story, as we read these revelations, Mutwiri, let me start with you. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts is, this is just another demonstration of what has been coined a term tumbocracy, where we have democracy that is driven by the individual stomachs of leaders instead of serving the interest of the nation. Because there is nothing wrong with benchmarking. But we've seen these trips so many times, from Rio to London 2012 to 2014 World Cup to the World Cup of 2010 in South Africa. But when these fellows come back, they don't sit down and formulate policies that can help Kenya, for example, qualify for these World Cups. They should look, for example, we have 4 nations. Iceland, with a population of 300 and about 90,000 people. We have Uruguay with a population of about 3.8 million. We have now Croatia in the final, they have a population of 4 million. We have Kenya, we are almost hitting the 50 million mark. Yet we are very far away from even getting to the final round of qualifiers. These things, these countries that, small countries that have shown us in this World Cup that they can go far, they have done so because of the formulate policy where talent is honed from the youth level to the senior level. And the government policy is very, very important. The legislative arm of the government is the parliament. So these MPs, when they go there, what kind of thing will they push, for example, a law that will see, for example, make it easier for Kenyan sportsmen or women to excel? Are they going to solve the problem that we don't even have stadiums? So
I wish they were here. I wish they were hearing the questions that you're asking. Let me bring Elias in on this. Elias, let me ask. When I tweeted about this, because I got the pictures and I put them on my social media, a section of Kenyans attacked me because in some of those pictures, their favorite political leader was there. In a sense, it's like a witch hunt. Why are you mentioning this person or that person? What does that tell you about the attitude of Kenyans towards politicians and their expectations?
Actually, thanks, Wahiga. Like my colleague said, it's an issue of tumbocracy and psychophancy. We have a lot of psychophants. I mean, somebody does wrong, you're afraid of, criticizing that person or putting things right. I believe this thing should end. Number one, this trip, I don't see it adding value because...
that's your assessment?
That's my assessment. 3 months ago, I was in Australia covering the Commonwealth Games. There was a bunch, half a dozen MPs there, and I actually took them on because there's one incident where, in the evening action, a couple of them came drunk to the stadium. We actually saw them physically drunk. Your colleague was there, Mike Okinyi, and fortunately, just decided
What do you mean by drunk? Because it's debatable. Were they staggering?
Okay, they were visibly not in their, control of their senses.
Okay.
They were not walking straight. So for me to say they are drunk, I believe I'm judging from the way they were physically walking and conducting themselves. Back to Russia, because we have seen selfies of them in stadiums. You and I and Mutwiri have covered these games, and where they were sitting is actually the public area,
yes,
the public seats. If really it was a benchmarking mission, they should have been given access to where the other, the organizing committee is sitting, so that they can have an exchange. I'd like to see them, post selfies with the Russian MPs of the Duma, the Russian parliament, where they're discussing legislation, sports legislation. If you look at the last 5 years, there are only 2 serious pieces of legislation that have been passed. That's the Sports Act of 2013 and the Anti-Doping Act of 2016. Other than that, debate on the floor of the House on sports is almost zero. So these guys are just for
zero
a
engagement.
joyride.
It's a joyride.
It's a joyride purely. And I mean, it's a big embarrassment to the nation. We are looking for money to improve our healthcare. The Big Four, the much trumpeted Big Four, these are issues that should be focused on, not people just going there to clock air miles and enjoy 5-star hotels and such treatment.
My goodness, I'm enjoying some of the comments here by my guests in studio. Before we carry on, I want to take you now live to Russia and bring in Jacob Isia, who has been covering the World Cup there, but he also has now quickly kind of tried to catch up with his legislators and find out exactly what is going on. Jacob Isia, good morning. I trust you can hear me loud and clear.
Sure, Wahiga, live, I can get you live well, and indeed, like you introduced, we are somewhere in Moscow called Begovaya. Here is near one of the hotels that some of the members of parliament and the members of the Senate are launching now as they continue to enjoy the action here in Russia, Wahiga.
So, so the hotels, which hotels are these specifically, and do you have any idea of the cost of this trip? How much will taxpayers eventually have to fork out, or how much have taxpayers already forked out for this particular benchmarking trip?
Well, there are a number of hotels here, but specifically like where we are, this one is called a bigger hotel, and I'm told that from the list that we have, is that to the lower end, the MPs are paying at least, the person who is supposed to be paying the least for a night is supposed to be 20,000, but to the higher end is supposed to be 600,000. So you can understand, of course, for the obvious reasons, Wahiga, that our MPs coming here, our senators coming here, they cannot come to lodge, of course, to the lower class. So 600 a night to the higher end, that should be the cost a night, not counting the air tickets to this place, not counting the tickets to the World Cup matches. For example, I got to know that some of them could not get the tickets because they were not able to buy them early, and they had to cough a lot of money for them, like a first-class ticket for the final going for 120,000 Kenya shillings, Wahiga. You can imagine. So for anybody here for about 2 weeks, maybe counting to the higher end of the amount they are paying for a night, then you can count the amount of money that one person is costing, knowing that there are over 30 legislators here from the National Assembly and the Senate, Wahiga.
Very surprising indeed, Jacob Isia. Have you had a chance to speak to any of them?
Well, since the arrival of the MPs here, Wahiga, it has been like they could anticipate it was not going to be a very sweet story for the Kenyans, and therefore most of them that have tried to reach directly have not been answering our calls. But luckily I got to speak to 2 yesterday, And what they are saying, I tried to get from them like what it is about benchmarking, and I could not get something elaborate about it. And I only got to know yesterday that today there is going to be a meeting between the Senate about the report that maybe yesterday the Speaker of the National Assembly, Justin Mutwiri, talked about. And this could be like something that was organized before, or maybe it could be a reaction from that outcry by the public. And of course, when the Speaker talked about a report, I'm told today they will be meeting. So they have not been speaking a lot. They have not been very open. Of course, it's like the new questions will come, and that's why it has not been very easy even to get them, even in the stadium. But you know, in this era of social media, everything that you do, you post online, Kenyans and every other part of the world is able to see what's happening. But basically, talking to them, it has not been very easy, save for the two that I've talked to yesterday, even telling to me that today is going to be the first meeting they're going to sit, the senators and also the MPs, to discuss maybe the report they're going to table to the parliament once they return back to Kenya, Wahiga.
So it almost feels like they now have quickly swung into action to compile that report. Do you have any idea about their program? When did they arrive in Russia? What is the itinerary? Do you have any idea about that?
Sure, Wahiga. The first batch of the MPs here was on 2nd July. But we are informed that before that, there were a number of MCAs who came from different counties, and to be specific, 3 from Kakamega County. But the first batch of the MPs was 2nd July, including one David Gikaria. You know, he has been in the football circles for some time. Gikaria. Then there was also Wafula Wamunyinyi, the MP for Kandui. He was among the first members to come here. And the others have been coming in different days, different times, including the latest arrivals on Wednesday at 1 p.m. specifically. The Honorable Moses Kajuang, alongside the minority leader in the Senate, talking about Orengo James, and they were able to catch live the action at on Wednesday night. That is between Croatia and England. So they have been coming different days. But on the question of their program and what they are doing, it's quite difficult to explain, Wahiga. Like I said before, I talked to two of them yesterday, and they could not tell me that maybe what they have been doing. Because when you talk about benchmarking, people expect that you have a list of terms of references. Yes. Like you are meeting the organizing committee, maybe representatives here, you are meeting some of the officials from the Ministry of Sports, maybe, and not only going to the stadium, but what we can see from whatever has been going back to, that is on media and all that, is attending matches, but nothing concrete we can say about an elaborate program for them. And so we'll be waiting to see how interesting it's going to be for the report, because again, if you table a report, you have to tell people that this we spoke to person A, we spoke to person B,
yes.
This is what they had to say. But as for now, it's difficult to tell, Wahiga, the kind of program they have been having, save for attending the matches that we are where they have been attending, Wahiga.
Final question to you, Isia. You've attended the whole World Cup. If we were to use you to benchmark, what would you tell us are things that you've seen there that you think Kenya should implement, even our football federation, if they endeavor to take the Harambee Stars to the World Cup one day? What lessons can we learn?
Well, I think there are two key things here, Wahiga, that Kenyans can learn, and Africa as a whole, because there are two key things that even the MPs are talking about when it comes to benchmark. Not only about qualifying to a major tournament like this, but also hosting a tournament. And remember that the Kenyans are still in pain after that lost chance to host quite a smaller tournament, the CHAN that we lost earlier this year. You know that it would have been difficult for a person to imagine that Kenya could not host CHAN that time. So number one is infrastructure, Wahiga. I mean, even when Morocco was bidding against the United States, Canada and Mexico, one thing that was clear, the governments need to invest in infrastructure. You can imagine Moscow, 5 international airports, you know, within the capital city of Moscow. And it tells you, like, when you talk about transport, that one is sorted. Talking about the metro rail stations here, the network is just awesome. You know, that is matters to do with infrastructure. The kind of stadium they have here, 11 different stadiums that are being used here, all of them that have attended so far, they are fantastic. And you talk about infrastructure, we are way far. So I think one of the things that the report I expect maybe to hear is that there is need to invest more in infrastructure, especially also the sporting infrastructure. Number two is the question of the seriousness about academies, you know, as the structure that we put as a government, as federations and all that. Look, I've been studying some of the teams and seen that It was known like 10 years ago when Kylian Mbappe for France was still 9 years old that he could be one of the stars to expect 10 years to come in France. Look, team like Iceland, well, they did not do very well. They qualified a very small nation, but it has been like using a person like Guy Fitzgerald to study football from the England system, taking to Iceland and all that.
Indeed.
And therefore, I believe there's a lot of work to do.
Okay.
Starting from the structures, the sporting infrastructure, and of course also being serious with the things that we put from the grassroots, especially with the age group teams, to make sure maybe 10 years to come, if not 5 years to come, we can see a team qualifying Wahiga.
I can see you're very passionate about this topic. We'll be waiting for your particular report as we wait for the one for parliamentarians when you get back. Thank you so much. Stay safe. Enjoy that World Cup final. Lucky you, Jacob is here. They're live for us from Russia. Just talking a little bit about the topic that we're discussing right now, the outrage that Kenyans have expressed over that trip by our parliamentarians to watch the World Cup. Mutwiri, let me come to you and get your thoughts on this. We've been here before. In fact, I've hosted you here before to have a discussion in terms of outrage over sports matters. He's had various platforms where he's discussed the same. Does change occur after that, or are we, quote-unquote, wasting our time with this discussion?
No, because there are so many reports gathering dust somewhere in the ministry headquarters. First things first, when this administration came into power in 2013, they promised 5 new stadiums. Up to today, even the biggest 2 cathedrals of sport, that is Kasarani and Nyayo Stadium, we don't know when they are going to be ready. Let's start from there. We talked about the Talent Academy. We've talked about so many things. These things are off the ground. If we benchmark in 2012 and we've not even started doing what that we are supposed to do at that time, it doesn't match. It means that by the time we get to 2018 benchmark report,
it will be 2030.
It will not even be 2030, it will be 2050. So while we continue with this gerrymandering, generations are getting lost. The other day we saw a regional tournament that was hosted in Nakuru simply because there was no place to play a tournament of that stature. The other day we have also seen, for example, we've seen even teams going to out, and we have athletes, for example, not being entered and things like that. So if we continue saying we'll be benchmarking, this is I think the 13th parliament, we'll benchmark in the 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th ad infinitum, and it will be the same thing. So what this exercise is simply like washing cows' feet and then getting them back to the pen.
Nothing changes.
Nothing changes.
Makori, you've had a chance to sit on a committee that looked into, I believe, the Rio fiasco. How far did your recommendations reach? For us to get an idea of whether any recommendations made from this trip is going to have any impact.
It's a good question, because the recommendations went back to the same members of parliament who are benchmarking. The last time I spoke to the CS for sports, he said that the report is with parliament, to decide the next course of action.
The current CS for sports? The
current CS. Okay. He said it's out of his hands, it's gone to parliament, and now supposed to, take action. It's obvious money was stolen. There is evidence that 88 million alone, from ticketing alone, went into somebody's pocket. That person is known. Instead of being punished, he's, gifted with a diplomatic appointment.
Although he has not been charged.
Although he's not been charged. It's an allegation, but we have the evidence, we have the proof. I was in that committee. We interviewed over close to 100 people. We got all the, documentation. And even the president himself, in his New Year's address, December 2016,
came out very strongly.
He said that that was the only thing he didn't do from 2016, punishing these people who are culpable. The DPP moved with speed and said, okay, these guys have a case to answer. And now, months later, nothing has happened.
So you have received no feedback?
No feedback, nothing. Absolutely. I mean, it's as good as dead. And that's what is setting this precedence. In Australia, the Commonwealth Games, we had members of parliament there. Have we seen that report tabled in parliament? But let me make a point here that not all MPs are, tumbocrats, if we can use that word. There are some who are well-meaning. Many of them are well-meaning, like, Godfrey Osotsi, who's pushing a bill to have academies in each constituency.
That's correct.
That's a positive development. That's a positive move. Actually, he should be the one benchmarking, not others on a joyride who you never see at local stadiums, local sports events.
And that's another issue, right? That these are people you'll never see.
You'll never see. The only time you see them in a stadium is when there's a political rally there.
Yeah.
But if there's a sports event, you never see them.
Mutwiri, for discussion's sake, the money that has been used on this trip,
Yes.
what could it have been channeled into in sort of a direct sports development, in your view?
For example, Jacob told us the high-end room goes for 600,000 shillings. My colleague here had a race, Kibirigo, that was where people like the world record holder Dennis Kimeto were discovered. To organize that race, he just needed to add another 200,000.
About 800,000.
Yes, just to make sure, without the prize money and everything, just to make sure the route is well marked, to make sure there is starting point, water and all that. So, if you're talking of, if each MP, whatever is being used to each MP, can go, for example, to a field like Kangemi, or go to field like Jericho and all that, Maringo and all that, or the estate football. You can sponsor a team. I spoke to the former Harambee Stars coach, Okumbi. Yeah. He has a small team there in Kariobangi.
That's right.
He was telling me the budget to run a season, a whole season for that team is 1.2 million. That is the same cost for 2 MPs sleeping for 2 nights.
We haven't counted tickets or anything else.
Just accommodation alone.
My goodness.
And you're talking about a team of 36 youngsters.
For 1 year.
For 1 year. For a whole season. Which he pays from his own pocket.
So where are our priorities?
Our priorities are totally mixed up. We put the cart before the horse. We lock the barn door when the horses are bolted. You know?
You can tell a sports writer here the expression
so the thing is, we always get it all wrong. We're talking about hosting tournaments, for example, or qualifying to the World Cup, yet we don't have a solid under 19 team, we don't have a solid under 21, under 23 team, and so on and so forth. Our top flight league itself, it's struggling to get venues. You see, players are struggling to get paid. The basics. Look at what England did so well this World Cup. You can say as much as you can say about the hype, but they did the basics right. You know, possession, pass the ball, set piece, basics.
They empowered youngsters.
And they empowered youngsters. Look at France. Tell me which 19-year-old gets close to Harambee Stars. So we are talking about things, we are talking about grand visions, but we don't want to get our hands dirty. We are talking about spending money with MPs, yet we have, for example, how many teams have been expelled from the FKF, from the second division going downwards, simply because of refusing to honor matches. A good team is Isibania. Very good players, very good, but they don't have the money.
The need is there. The money, it appears, is there, because it's never denied when a lawmaker needs to travel.
It's never denied. Look at team like Isibania. They started the National Super League very well, at the top. Now they're almost getting relegated.
Lack of funds.
Lack of funds.
Hang on, Elias, come in. You've been covering sports for many years. Do you get tired of covering what I can call is a mediocre sector? Not mediocre because the talent isn't there, but because priorities are all wrong.
Well, covering sport can be both, you know, exciting and frustrating. Frustrating when you have people like these MPs, you know, spending our resources in this manner. Exciting because our athletes make us proud. When you're out there, you hear the Kenyan national anthem playing, you know, with 3 guys on the podium with the steeplechase. It makes you proud. It keeps you going. You want to be associated with the success. And then come these joyriders who, you know, water down all this effort. It's really painful. And I'm surprised that none of them is in Dar es Salaam for the Sekafa Club Championship, because I think the allowances there are lower than what they get in Europe. Yeah, so I mean, if it's benchmarking, they should have started with Dar es Salaam. Azam FC have very good facilities that we can learn from. You know, Simba Sports Club. Tanzania took our top striker from Gor Mahia, Medi Kagere, because they are able to pay him more. There is big investment in Tanzanian football, in Tanzanian sport. Why can't they go and benchmark there instead of going to Luzniki and sitting with the fans and you know, enjoying single malt whiskey? I mean,
you seem to know even the exact drink. Hang on, I want to come back to you. Let's look at some SMSs. This is what Kenyans have to say about this. All right. Kimuge from Eldred says, MP's trip to Russia, not a surprise. Soon they'll be traveling to space and we will pay for them. Unbelievable. Thank you for that SMS. Richard Mutai from Kericho. It is totally shameful to see MPs using taxpayers' money. How can they benchmark? They did not send technical persons. What do they know about buildings or structures? Our leaders are rotten with corruption. I'm ashamed of being represented by wolves. Oh my. Okay. One last one. Janet Major from Luanda. Wahiga, ni nini MPs wanataka kuenda kuona? TV inaonyesha mpira kwa masaa mazuri baada ya kazi. Wanatumia pesa zetu bure kabisa. All right. What lessons can we learn, Mutwiri, from how international or other media outlets in other countries stay on top of a story? For example, this one, outrage. I can assure you that by Monday next week, we'll have forgotten about this. We have moved on. Yet if it was English MPs who've gone for this trip and there's a lot of questions around it, English media would stay on them for a long time and demand resignation, demand accountability, that sort of thing. What have been our mistakes as the media?
Before I stepped into this studio, I had a discussion with my esteemed colleague about how we're getting it wrong in journalism nowadays. And it's not even restricted to sport. It's even news and every other business. We stopped interrogating. We go to somewhere, we do a story, like this story, and then next week, we move on to something else. That is the reason why these people always know they can get away with this. So they call it forced outrage. Because they know, oh, okay, we'll trend for 2 days, then after next week, we are done. So the thing is, as a media, we owe it to the Kenyans because they represent us in parliament, we represent the nation from the fourth estate. We owe it to the nation to put these people to their toes. For example, if you've been following this story about Brexit, the British cabinet has lost 3 or 4, 5 ministers.
At least 3 ministers, yes.
In the last 1 week. Because it's a matter of principle. If the government does not do what I feel is right, I don't deserve to be in it. Then there was this minister who was sacked when she came to Nairobi. Because of, you see, we want to see such things happen. We want to see people losing their seats. Because you can't tell me, for example, you have no interest in sport, you're not even sitting in a sports committee, you don't even know how a ball is kicked, you don't know even when a ball is offside, but you're there watching the World Cup. Yet, we've left a coach here who would have learned a few things. Like my colleague is saying, you've not sat with the parliamentarians to see how they put this thing together, or even forget about the facilities. Let us start with the team itself. Before we even think of hosting the World Cup, let us get there first. We've now gotten there. We have 55 years of independence and counting. So why can't they say, for example, why the Russian team went as far as the quarterfinals against all odds? Everybody had written them off. What did they do? What kind of motivation did they give them? What type of structures did they give them? Let us learn that. Then we come here, we always talk about 2022 Qatar. It shall come and it shall pass.
It shall come. Oh my goodness.
We shall not start talking about 2026 United States, Canada, Mexico. It shall come and it shall pass. Will we have a chance
in the expanded format? Maybe that's a question I should throw to you, Elias. Is 48 teams maybe the solution for Kenya? Could we possibly slip into that?
It's still going to be difficult. Even if they made it 100 teams, it will still be difficult for us to qualify without planning. But if we plan well, I believe we have the talent. We've seen it through people like Victor Wanyama and Mariga playing in the top Champions League in Europe. We have the talent. We have better players than Victor and McDonald. But the structures are not there. These are the debates we should be having in Parliament. I'd like to see a session, a heated session where people are talking about, sports facilities, how we can improve them, and, people voting to bring in new legislation. Traveling to Russia, I have no problem with that. But as long as there's a return on that investment, we saw in South Africa, there was another group of MPs who went there again. We didn't see what we learned from there. But there are a lot of lessons on how Parliament can help bring in legislation that is specific to sports. We saw them establishing World Cup courts in South Africa during the World Cup. That was fast-tracked through Parliament. There is a lot that MPs can do to make our sporting, scene better, to make our youths grow and to make Kenya succeed. But I'd like to challenge them. I'd like to see that report from Russia before we indict them fully. We'd like to see what they've learned. I'm sure they've learned nothing because looking at where they're sitting, for example, I'm repeating this because they need to engage the right people.
Sit and the positions that they were sitting at, you can't learn anything.
You can't. In fact, I think Jacob is here is a perfect person to come with a report and tell us the way forward. We media are never consulted. Between us, I think we have 70 years of experience in the field. But have you ever been called by an MP or a parliamentary committee to give you suggestions on how we can host the event better? There are people with technical knowledge, but I don't know what happens once you get elected and get into that House of Parliament. We have colleagues who've been investigative journalists. We have former sports people, but when they get into that house, I don't know what happens.
Something changes.
So perhaps you'll change when you go there.
No, I'm not going there. Mutwiri, there's something interesting he's mentioned.
Yeah.
Victor Wanyama, McDonald Mariga.
Yes.
In 2014, when it was World Cup fever all over again, and every TV channel here had a show,
yes,
they were the stars.
Yes.
In 2018, World Cup season again, every TV station has a World Cup show, they are the stars again. You're telling me within 4 years, Kenya has not managed to produce another star. So when you ask who are the best footballers in the country, we are still repeating the same names?
I'm sure you'll concur with me that in Kenya, sporting excellence is mostly coincidental. Look at rugby, the Kayanges, the Simius. It's a family that were very well talented. In cricket, we had the Tikolos. In football, we have the Wanyamas. In athletics, now we have the Manangois.
It's almost like what? Like they got lucky?
It's
they
incidental.
lucky that they made it?
It's an incidental product. It's not a product of a system.
Okay.
It's good genetics. You find a family that has good genes, like the Manangois, the Tikolos, the Wanyamas. And when they come in, they're the ones who pepper the cracks because their excellence is what we ride on. But we don't have a system that produces the Wanyamas like he's saying. I've gone around, I've seen their players with the potential of even doing greater than they have.
This is football, not athletics.
Yeah.
Football.
Football. Look at rugby, for example. We have the Injeras, the Simius. It's a family affair. Now Kayange is out, Injera is following suit, Amonde is going out, the Simius are going out. So who are we going to, who can we say we are producing to take over from them? That is why we talked about Dennis Oliech for 10 years. Before him, we talked about Michael Origi for Okoth for the 10 years before. Does it mean we can't produce we produce a forward every 10 years? Now we have Mike Orunga.
We are in danger that in 2022, when we have World Cup shows again, that we will still, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong,
people.
The same people are the ones we'll invite as the stars.
Because we are not breeding talent.
We're not breeding talent.
And that's why again Parliament is important, because they can bring in legislation that will help talent grow. One area that has not been looked at by anybody is how do you naturalize foreigners who have potential. At the Kakuma refugee camp, there is huge talent. In our refugee centers, we have a lot of talent. Luol Deng, who was a star in the NBA, he's a guy from Kitale. He did his education in Kitale. When we were in Australia for the Commonwealth Games, there's a guy from South Sudan who is playing, was running 800 meters for Australia. They have given him citizenship. Is there a way we can appreciate the refugees who are based in Kenya and who have some talent? We take them up and naturalize them. That could be a stopgap measure to help us or show up the talent that we have. People like Mo Farah, he was in Kenya as a refugee for a while before going to Great Britain. A lot of people transit through Kenya, but we don't see their talent because we don't have any, established mechanisms for jealously tapping this talent.
When they're out there and they make it, now we want to identify with them.
And you look at the France team, for example.
The France team, exactly.
Mbappe is from, I think, Guam. We have Ghanaians. We have
what a squad.
Senegalese.
Yeah.
The German team that won 2014. We had Turks. We had Tunisians. We had Ghanaian also, Boateng. So there's the diversity of talent. We should not just look at Kenya as indigenous Kenyans per se. And that is why most teams like the Argentina and Brazil are failing, because they are relying so much on their homegrown talent, yet other nations are becoming the United Nations. We had Switzerland, a guy from TZ playing for Switzerland.
There's a Kenyan in the Swedish squad.
In the Swedish squad.
In the Swedish squad.
We need to change our strategy. Is what I feel you gentlemen are saying.
Yes. Look at Chris Froome. We lost Chris Froome.
Just like that.
Yeah,
amongst others.
And this is by establishing laws through Parliament that can give these people an opportunity. And I hope that benchmarking trip from Moscow will come up with that.
We are all really hoping for that. I'm told we have a tweet or two. Okay, let's have them up. All right. Nashpa is asking, benchmarking. What are they evaluating there that they must be paid per DM? What is the agenda of the benchmarking? Do we have any sports officials there with them? This is just annoying. Okay, Moses Gashoki 51. We are looking for money to pay the outstanding debt Kenya has. We're looking for money to improve the status quo of the country. Some MPs are busy misusing taxpayers' money. Mumo Kanini, outrageous. How can we be struggling to pay taxes only for MPs to use the money to go watch football? I mean, wow. Don't we have an accountability system? Njoroge Mike 1, imagine being taxed for taking a selfie, ndio mheshimiwa aende aone Pogba live. Bora uhai. I think Njoroge Mike has given up. The key DK says this issue about the MPs going to Russia so that they can bring a report. What report is this they are bringing? And for the past 5 years, we've been waiting for the 5 stadia, and there is none. All right. Let me get final thoughts from you, gentlemen. You can respond to those tweets or give me a last thought. Mutwiri, let me start with you.
When Kenyans write those things, they are not writing for the sake of writing or because they just want to throw punches at these MPs. They are outraged because, look at it this way, every Kenyan who is earning money, 30% goes to the government. Then you're taxed 16% VAT for every commodity you buy. So you're talking about 46% of your income at least goes to the government. And you're not forgetting the NHIFs and the NSSF's contributions and all that. So when somebody else goes that on your tab.
On your tab, pretty much.
And there is nothing to show. Like Elias said, there is nothing wrong with going to Russia. But what are we going to, what is the ROI? What is the return on investment?
For the Kenyan taxpayer.
For the Kenyan taxpayer. The day we shall connect the two, that is when now we stop this outrage. Because the speaker might say they are justified. Justified to do what? We had teams from Kaiseri, the late Kaiseri, they went there, I think it was the Olympics?
2009 World Championships.
We also went, we had teams that had the former sports minister, Commander Helen Sambili. We had teams that, there was one that was even led by Ako. These trips have always been there. And we have always been benchmarking. If it is spelling the whole word, we have not even gotten out of the B.
If we're talking about benchmarking.
Yes. So let us see tangible results.
For us to say that it can be justified.
Yes.
Okay. Elias, give me a final thought on this.
Yeah, I mean, all those tweets and messages you've received, I've not seen any in support of the MPs. And that's the pulse of the nation. People are not happy with what is happening. And of course, it's true that this is basically a waste of time. But let's give them a benefit of the doubt. They're still in Moscow. We expect them to come back and give a report and transform
they are meeting
Kenyan
now,
sport.
or they are meeting soon to discuss that report.
I hope they're discussing the report and not the bills from the previous night's bar. Because, I mean, that's what we saw, an MP losing almost 1 million shillings in London during the Olympics in a bar.
In a bar.
He was seated with the cash, somewhere next to his seat, and somebody pulled it with an umbrella. The CCTVs could show. This is a kind of, this is how they operate. This is how they operate with that money. But
with Kenyans' money.
With our money. I mean, it's outrageous. But let's give them that benefit, like I was saying.
Okay.
We hope to see, it being tabled in the floor of the House.
And
I say, yeah, I have no problem with them going. Actually, all of them could go, even the sergeant at arms, provided there is a return on that investment.
As long as
we see, the work being done.
Fascinating conversation. A sad one to have because we are asking questions. We hope we would have known before they would have gone. Maybe they would have called a press and said, we are going to Russia. This is what we're going to look for.
And that's the other thing,
this is what we promise.
Because Jacob says they are not willing to talk to the media. I mean, they're our employees, for heaven's sake.
Exactly.
They should be having press conferences addressing. Today we had this, we met the Speaker of the Russian Parliament, we met the local organizing committee, and this is how we plan to implement these things. But, running away from the media.
Almost sneaking out of the country into Russia.
It shows that they're up to no good.
Elias Makori, Mutwiri Mutuota, senior sports editors, great minds in terms of sports matters. Thank you for finding time to be here with us on Citizen Extra.